This is the When Work Isn't Work podcast. This podcast exists to help people reignite the love of what they do in a post-pandemic world. The pandemic gave us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reflect on what is truly important to us in work and in life. I'm your host, Sinead Connolly, co-founder and director of Lotus People, an award-winning Sydney-based recruitment agency. We hope you enjoy today's chat. My guest on today's podcast is the ever-impressive Glen Hare of Fox & Hare. Glen and his team run a purpose-led financial advisory that supports young members, advocates for financial wellness and literacy, and who have a vision to get young people retirement ready from the beginning of their careers. Glen is an extremely hardworking and focused leader with a true passion for giving back and for community. And above all, he is a bloody lovely guy. I loved this chat and I think you will too. Enjoy. Glen, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, you have a radio voice. I love it already.
I've never been told that. Thank you.
You were born to be on podcasts, so I'm very grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. The premise of this podcast is, as you know, is all about sort of it's me speaking to people and chatting to people who love what they do. And I think as an outsider who's observed your business over the last number of years, it's been so refreshing and so inspiring and so incredible to watch the business disrupt an industry, which in my mind, very much needed disrupting. So obviously working within financial services, I know from my own experience, even trying to engage with a financial advisor over the years, I found that I was looking around kind of speaking with middle-aged wealthy men, and I just felt like I didn't know my place within that or my role within that, even when I was just looking for it as a service. So seeing the success of your business has been honestly amazing. So when I came up with the idea for this podcast, you were one of the first people that I knew I wanted to speak to. So very happy to have you here. To kick us off, to kind of give us a bit of an idea of kind of where you're at, can you maybe tell everyone where you're at in your career now? And we'll talk about the history and the journey that got you here. But tell us a bit of an overview of your career and your role, where it is today in its current form.
In its current form, so I'm co-founder of Fox & Hare Financial Advice with my lovely business partner, Jessica Brady. The business is now 4.5 years old, which I think I reflect on that. I'm like, is it still a young business? Is it an old business?
Ancient.
It's certainly aged me. But so in terms of the last 4 years, I suppose, for the first 2 years, it was just Jess and I. And now we're a team of 13, predominantly working with a member base that our youngest member, she is 24.
Wow.
So she's a bit of an outlier. She's certainly a go-getter.
I was going to say on the ball.
Yeah, definitely on the ball. But our older members were probably in their kind of mid-40s. So very much just working with those that are in that accumulation phase, I suppose.
Yeah, which is probably quite different to a lot of financial advisors, right? It's
Definitely.
Goes against the grain. So you knew that, you saw that. And I'll ask you more about that. But I guess thinking about what got you here. So the journey, how did you fall? Because you've had an amazing career. I want to hear about it. Tell me.
I started at Macquarie Bank at the ripe old age of 19.
Yeah, wow. They get you young there, hey?
So I started there when I was 19 and so I was working full-time and then going to uni part-time, finishing my accounting degree. And so I was at Mac Bank for 10 years. Great experience, learn a lot in different roles, from kind of trade support roles, wealth management, M&A for small to medium businesses. And to be frank, got to a point in my career where I was, chatting to my business partner, who I used to work with at Macquarie, and was just having a conversation around, well, what's next? What are the plans for kind of the future? And working in that wealth management space, as you've kind of already alluded to, we came across an opportunity to work with a very different demographic to who typically seeks financial advice. Mm-hmm. So in Australia, the average age of a financial advisor is 55.
Doesn't surprise me.
78% of men. And most people don't see a financial advisor statistically until they're about 5 years from retirement.
Wow.
And the logic behind that is they get to a point and in their early 60s, they go, I'd really love to retire at some point. So they reach out to an advisor and they ask two questions. One, can I retire? And two, if I do retire, what does that look like? Whereas the whole premise around all of our conversations is having conversations with people in their 20s and 30s, not just about retirement, but working out how do they ensure that they're making really smart decisions now to set themselves up for kind of the medium and the long term, enjoying life today, but also finding the right balance to really kind of kickstart their financial goals.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important, right? It's so necessary. And I think that industry really did need to be disrupted because
100%.
there was, and I'm sure there are people like me who were going out seeking that advice and wanting that support before 55, which is, as you said, the average age. But couldn't actually find it. And so there was actually roadblocks in place for the demographic that aren't kind of instantly being targeted to. As you're talking about your career at Macquarie, I mean, obviously that's the absolute grounding for what you do now. All of your experience, all of the information that you would have learned about your craft, honing your craft would have been learned there. Did you love it? Like, in thinking about this podcast and talking to people who I see you and you love what you do. You love your business. You love your members. You love what you do. Like, did you throughout your career?
Yeah. I did. There was... I started about 12 months after the GFC, which was pretty mind-blowing experience. For those that know Macquarie, sometimes it was referred to as the Millionaires Club or the Millionaires Factory.
Yeah, wow.
So the ripe old age of 19, I was like, I've made it. I'm at the factory. I'm going to be a millionaire in no time. And then 12 months later, GFC hits, and it was a very different place. There was certainly times where I was like, oh, is this the right trajectory? Is this where I need to be? But I was always very determined to make sure that if I was in a role that I didn't feel that I was growing, both personally and professionally, then I would very strategically determine how do I make sure that I move roles. So I was there for 10 years, but I had quite a number of roles moving around the bank, kind of looking for that next opportunity, looking for that next kind of growth opportunity, I suppose.
Yeah. Were you always, as you're talking, it just strikes me that you're so ambitious as a human. Were you always ambitious? Like, is that something that's just inbuilt in you?
Yeah. Not for the kind of the fame or the glory or anything like that, but just I'm very much purpose driven.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that if I'm doing something, whatever it is, whether it's CrossFit or whether it's, I've just started rowing or, whether it is my career, it's the backbone of that is purposeful.
Yeah. And I think that translates in what I can see of the business and I refer anyone, I love working with businesses and with people who are values based and purpose driven. And I refer people over to you guys. And the first thing that they say is, I love their values. I love what they stand for. And I think that's not always something that's very obvious or that's really lent on within financial services or perhaps particularly within financial advisory. So
totally.
I think within those industries, and even it's the same with me in recruitment, it's purpose led. It's about the people. It's about the people experience. And I think when you have that clear vision of what you're working towards, you can. I spoke to Erin about this when I was speaking to her on the podcast. You're in flow. Yeah. Things then you know that the hard work you're putting in is going into a specific focused area, and then good things come from that, and it's energy and it's abundance, and things kind of happen as they're meant to, which is great. Before you started, you obviously have your degree, as you said, in accountancy, and started at 19. But before did you ever have a moment of wondering, what do I do? Or did you just always gravitate towards sort of this space and this industry?
No. So when I was younger, like probably a lot of kids, I wanted to be a pilot.
Oh, cute. I can picture you as a pilot. Yeah. Maybe that's a later retirement.
Well, I still have a goal of getting my helicopter's license. I would love to do that. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
If it's a goal on your list, I know you're going to achieve it. I'm waiting for an update in like 20 years' time to say that you've done it and you have a helicopter.
Jump in the chopper or head down to the vineyards in Hunter or something. Yeah.
I'm remaining in touch with you until that moment comes.
Yeah. I guess my childhood was very much, want to be a pilot. And my strong suit at school was business, economics, maths, things like that. And I did accounting at uni. I've never actually been an accountant as such. But what that particular path gave me was just, I guess, grounding in the financial services space. And in terms of determining what it is I wanted to do, it wasn't really until I started my corporate career and got that first job to then understand what is actually out there that enabled me to kind of navigate through all the different options to get to where I am today. But at no point in my as I was growing up did I say, yep, I want to be a financial advisor. But I'd always been very, maths focused, conscious of, savings and things like that. I have 5 brothers, 4 older, 1 younger. And even in my, teenage years, my older brothers would borrow money off me and I'd charge them interest.
Oh my God, I love that.
Because they were like too lazy to go down the road or whatever it may be. But I've always just been very conscious of it.
Yeah.
And I definitely get that from my mum, certainly not my dad.
Yeah.
But yeah, where I've landed today, I'm just really grateful. I genuinely do love what I do. And we just approach things by ensuring that we're always just creating a safe space in that money is just something that people talk about everything, like everything except money.
It's bizarre. It honestly, we have as you're speaking about education and what you were interested in, we have no literacy around it. It's fascinating. I genuinely didn't know anything about saving, I knew it as a concept, but was hopeless at it. Yeah. It's just fascinating. And I think it's just, as you said about your mum and your dad, it's learned behaviors. And it's great that you had an example of, as you say, someone who was able to teach you good habits and teach you good behaviors around money. But then also you could have learned from your dad and you could have taken that side of it as well. But some people have two parents who are like that, and some have parents who, but it's mostly what happens from our parents. That's kind of where we get it from. And so if we're if we have parents who aren't in any way financially literate or don't speak openly about money, then we're kind of screwed. Yeah. And you're right. You don't really talk about it amongst friends. We're so open.
Everyone's just winging it.
Yeah.
And even when I think about the crossover between work and how someone manages their kind of financial world, because we talk about work and life, because money touches everything. A lot of our members aren't driven by money, but they're certainly driven by what it can afford them. And when we talk about, careers and what path they're going to take themselves, it's often a conversation around either it's just a means to an end, and they've got to pay the bills and it's good money and I just want to, keep going because it's good money, or it's others that are very much focused on, well, what do they get out of that particular role apart from money? And there's no right or wrong, but I think the call out for me is for those that are, working their way up, whether it be a corporate ladder or starting to, earn good money, if they are in a role that they're not loving but they're doing it for the money, then they need to make sure that they're managing that money, then work out how do they then start doing something that they want to do.
Yeah.
Because then I was having a conversation literally with a member yesterday. She's so stressed at work and she rewards herself. And that's okay, because she's like, I just work so hard. I need to buy this. I need to be, traveling every 6 months and things like that. And I love travel. Everyone clearly loves travel. I like nice things, but you don't want to be constantly beholden to a job that you don't love because of the financial rewards. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that you're utilizing those financial rewards to then set yourself up so that you can do then something that's more aligned to, I guess, your core values.
Mm-hmm. Because otherwise it's just cyclical, right? You end up in a situation where you're tied and trapped, and that if you are stressed and you're relying on kind of ways and means to, as you said, reward yourself and relieve that stress, but in a material way, even if it feels like it's kind of fulfilling at the time, you're still trapped. And is that you for the next 30, 40 years? I find the idea of panicking, the idea of being so kind of tied up and tied into a job or to something that you mightn't enjoy, purely because you have this lifestyle or you have a mortgage or you have this kind of things that you need to keep up. But how many people do it? And I think you see a lot of it and I'm basing this purely on what I see on TV and movies, but in America, it's like the American dream of people getting to a point where they have mortgages and college education. And obviously we have a different sort of way of living here with the university system and how affordable it is. But yeah, you do see a lot of it, and it's scary, right? And you must see a lot. I mean, you see it directly, right?
So much. And we don't live linear lives anymore. Like our parents would meet their high school sweetheart, they get married, they buy a house, they have a kid, they stay in the same job for 40 years, they retire, and they don't kind of do much. You know, our members are taking 12 months sabbatical. They're changing jobs every 2-3 years. They're, you know, they may have a family. They may not, or start a family. They may not. They may get married. They may not. Like, you know,
so different.
They could start a family by themselves, like have a kid by themselves. It's, you know, there's certainly no right or wrong. It's just about understanding the decisions that you're making today around, I guess, your financial world, and determining how does that enable then you to do what you want in real life. Because often there's a huge disconnect. People kind of manage their money on one side of things, and then they have their goals, life goals on the other, whereas the reality is how you manage your financial world is the enabler.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily meet in the middle, and that's essentially what you guys do, right? It's so interesting, and I think so many people are hungry for that information. So many people my age and so many peers and so many people I know, they want to make the steps to kind of go in the right direction around setting themselves up. But also I think when you're not close to that age of retirement, you can just kind of crack on and keep on going with it without it being a huge focus. With the pandemic, you touched on it there. I mean, I have seen from the perspective of a recruiter that through my team, through the conversations we've been having over the last 18 months, everything has changed for a lot of people. Individuals now are leaving businesses and wanting to join businesses who are values-based, people-focused, culture-focused. That was always a thing, but it was nice to have. It wasn't necessarily the absolute kind of reason for the catalyst for wanting to make a change and kind of have a career move. From your perspective, I mean, you're in, again, so we're kind of privileged, aren't we? Like we get such exposure into the motivations and the behaviors and the kind of the stuff that you don't necessarily hear from people. Totally. We get this amazing insight into people's lives. So from your perspective and your members, have things changed since the pandemic?
Totally resonate with what you're saying. In that people are looking for a career, they're looking for an employer that is going to support their lifestyle and how they wish to live their lives, which is quite opposite to, I suppose, what I would argue would have been kind of 2-3 years ago, whereas you'd have to kind of mold your lifestyle into whatever the corporate culture was that you were joining. You know, and I even think about it in our business. You know, we are pretty much 100% virtual. We come in together at least once a month just for that kind of human interaction. Our members can see us face to face if they want to, but the vast majority of people still prefer to just do it virtually. And it's interesting. I listen to some of our members where they're, you know, being forced to come into the office, whether it be 2, 3, 4 days per week or whatever the kind of the metric is. And they're kind of then determining, well, does that fit with what I want out of life? And then making the call as to, well, if it doesn't fit, is this the right employer for me? Obviously, kind of money and personal circumstances certainly does play a factor, but it is definitely not the be all and end all.
Totally. And I think that makes it hard for employers to flip it on its head, because I have conversations with organizations, and my team and I do every week, saying, what's the secret sauce? What's the hybrid? What's the ideal hybrid model? Like what's the ideal work from home situation? And it's so person specific. Some people are more introverted, or exactly as you say, they've moved up the coast, down the coast, they've moved interstate, and they're benefiting hugely from this kind of remote working and suits them to the ground. Others might live alone and they are more extroverted and they absolutely want to be in an office. And I've seen people leave businesses that are more remote first because they miss that sort of office first interaction. Exactly. So there isn't kind of a one size fits all answer to what organizations should do, because everyone has very different versions of how this world looks. But I adore it. Like if I think about, and I'm sure you're the same in the nature of the work that you do, we're so people facing. Yeah. And I love people. I thrive on connection. I love this industry because I thrive on connection, but I'm also slightly introverted. I'm an extroverted introvert. And so for me, 5 days a week of back-to-back meetings in person, I used to be shattered. I would get colds all the time. My immune system would be run down. I was exhausted. And this new world, that balance of being able to preserve energy and work on things rather than just doing all of the time. It's been incredible for me personally, and having that balance has been incredible. And I know if for you as well, you've obviously moved interstate and like your life has now changed. And I was home in Ireland for 3 months last year, working from Ireland. With Sydney hours essentially, and that we couldn't have done that. Like we literally could not have done that, and I find it just so amazing how much the change has enabled us to really focus on that balance.
Definitely. I mean, and there's all these different kind of competing pros, cons, things like that. And you're right, like there is certainly no one size fits all. So we still have the office space for those that want to come in and connect. But in terms of whether they choose to or not, don't choose to, that is up to them. But just picking up on your comment around the virtual piece, one thing that I'm on a kind of a personal journey trying to work through is, because you aren't moving around from different meeting rooms and, moving from one side of the city to the other. And I was having a chat to one of my colleagues yesterday about this. It's just my diary is just back to back to back to back virtuals. And then I'm like, when's the downtime? So it is still about, again, just finding the right balance. And it's certainly a challenge, but one that with a bit of focus you can overcome.
I totally agree. And you really do need to schedule in all of those times for break. And even the doing, every meeting I leave, I have an action. I'm sure you're the same. I have an action point on. I have to do something after these meetings. And I literally do it, and I'm like, finish the meeting, and by the end of the day, I'm like 5 o'clock. Right, let's get the doing done rather than just the interacting and the being.
Totally.
This podcast is sponsored by Lotus People Recruitment. We are an award-winning Sydney-based recruitment agency with a genuine human-first and innovative approach. Lotus People are disrupting the recruitment industry by placing quality and service at the heart of all we do. Recruiting roles across HR, talent, business support, and much more. Head to our website today for more information if you are a job seeker or an employer hiring staff. We're at lotuspeople.com.au.
No, it's amazing. And I think it is something it's just been a huge light, and a huge spotlight has been shone on it. And I think the other thing that's really come into focus that I've been having a lot of conversations around is the mental health side of things, the burnout, the balance. Like, how are you personally sort of managing that balance and the back-to-back meetings? And then how, as a leader, are you sort of focusing on that with your team to ensure that in this world where productivity can be really high because it is back to back, but then also coming up for air and having that sort of balance is super important as well.
Yeah, so both personally as well as with the team, this is a huge focus for us. And in fact, we talk about it every single day. So for me personally, I'm up at 5 every day. I start work at 6. I get my best work done before kind of 9 o'clock in the morning, before the emails start kind of rolling in and the Teams messages start coming through. But I go to the gym, just starting back at CrossFit at lunchtime every single day. And that is a non-negotiable for me, in that, even thinking about meetings with members and things like that, like if I don't take that space, then I'm going to be sitting in that office, sitting in front of my computer screen, staring at that little green dot for 12 hours nonstop. And, in terms of doing that, is that productive? I would argue not, because me creating that space in the middle of the day, to be frank, enables me to kind of recharge for the afternoon. And that's why I choose to do it in the middle of the day, to kind of get my, heavy workout in the morning, for want of a better word, train in the middle of the day, and then I can lean into the afternoon. And every single afternoon at 4:45, we have a 15-minute check-in with everyone on the team. Very like just a casual 15-minute chat, just so that we actually get to see each other at least once a day. And on each day, there's because the team has kind of grown over the time. There's a couple of people each day to kind of just share how they're feeling. What's a challenge? What's something that they're really proud of? And then how they would rate themselves in terms of how they're feeling out of 10. And it just creates a really, really, really awesome space to have a conversation. If someone's usually an 8 or a 9 and they say 7 today, can you share what's on your mind? And we can just kind of create that circle of safety, I suppose, to talk to, is there anything else that someone else in the team can do for you? We had an offsite a couple of months ago, and we had a nutritionist come in and talk about, again, just simple things around what should we be eating, what should we not be eating. It's one personal kind of physical and mental well-being is paramount. And it's really interesting in that the conversation has also spread in terms of kind of just our line of work to a sense of financial well-being. And we have even starting to talk with a number of running corporate workshops around the correlation between one's physical, mental, and then financial well-being, and the impact that, feeling stressed about your finances, feeling like you're not getting on top of things, feeling like maybe you're not making the smartest decisions to set yourself up, can have an impact on both physical and mental well-being as well. So it's something that, again, we talk about internally with our staff, but we also talk with our members as well about that, ensuring that they are creating that space, finding the right balance. And when they have goals and aspirations around, I want to be financially comfortable, I want to have financial freedom, these are often emotionally charged, goals and aspirations, coming back to this sense of security, back to this sense of stability. It is a very privileged position to be in, both as a leader as well as obviously in my role as a financial advisor.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important. Like it's so holistic. And I think organizations who approach it in the way that you do, that sort of empathetic leadership that the likes of Brené Brown and Simon Sinek and these amazing leaders who, you bought me the Simon Sinek book, Infinite Game.
Infinite Game. I've got to read it again. Loved
that book. We spoke about it once and then it arrived in the post the next week. I was like, oh my goodness, so thoughtful. But yeah, those leaders like that, like they're setting the bar in terms of how modern leadership should go. And it does have a holistic lens. It needs to be that it does cover everything. And I think the one that's probably spoken about least is the financial well-being. But you're exactly right. That's a massive contributor to stress and worry for people. And we actually do the exact same thing around the rating. We do it in the morning. So we have a quick whip round in the morning, and everyone just does a highlight of what they're up to for the day and if they need help with anything. And then we rate each other out, and we rate ourselves. Each other. You look like a 6 today. Imagine. And then we rate ourselves. And today one of the guys was a 12. He was like, I'm a 12 today. I'm like, brilliant. Your energy, you can jump in and help everyone else out. But it is so good. Sometimes people are a 6 and it just prompts the follow-up. And whether we're in the office or not, but when you're in the office, you can read energy. You can pick up on people. You know what's up. Whereas on Zoom, you have a very short, or on Teams, you have a very short window to sort of get a gauge on how people are doing. If they're sending an email, that could be perceived as them being off, but it might just be that they're very quickly disengaged in the meet. It's really hard to tell. So I think that ability to just have that touch point is super important. And we definitely see the benefit in doing it. And I love as well that you say for your own balance and your own kind of mental wellness, focusing on exercise. It's crucial. And I really noticed that myself a few years ago. Exercise was something that was in my diary if I was able to get to it. It was the thing that could be moved. It was look, it's in there and we'll hope for the best. And over the course of probably, again, the pandemic, being at home, having a less commuting time and having just more space, I was able to really embed that in my routine. I cannot function without it.
Totally.
If I was not going to the gym, doing Pilates, doing the bits that I do, the many things that I do, I wouldn't be a human. I couldn't use my brain. I would be going from sleep to work in a brain fog, and I have to do it in the morning. But it's super, super, super important. And I think you're right. Having that strictness around it and making it a non-negotiable is actually a really good place to start. And it ties in so much with people loving what they do, because I think, again, the premise of the podcast, if you're not loving what you do, you kind of lose a bit of zest for life.
Yeah.
You kind of then don't have the motivation to exercise. Whereas I know that when I'm in flow and I'm absolutely loving my day to day and loving the challenges and kind of doing what I do, when I have the punctuation of my day kind of being exercise, and I know, okay, in the morning I'm doing that, and I have the structure around it, I just feel better. I feel good, and I feel happy, and I feel energized.
Yeah. I think just picking up on your comment, Sinead, like we have to be doing things that we love. Yeah. Otherwise, what is the point?
Yeah.
And, my only caveat to that is, everyone's in very different circumstances, with family, with, mortgages and things like that. But if we're not in a career or we're not in a job that we love, we're just doing it for the money, that's okay to a certain extent. But you need to, my argument to that is working out how do you get to a point financially then where you can pivot in your career and do something that you love, knowing that all of kind of those financial obligations will be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see as well that people who are purpose-led, they tend to do obviously work that they love within their own business, you as an example, but then also do a lot within the community. And that kind of stems from as an extension of kind of what you do in the day-to-day. And you're, again, a very good example of that. You do, and that you and the business do a lot of work within the community. Do you think that, have you seen any examples or situations where people have a job that they're just like, it's fine, get me to the end of the day, but then they kind of make up for it with maybe doing charity work or nonprofit work, and they sort of I guess supplement it with this work that they really love outside of doing just the day-to-day?
Yeah, great question. So in short, definitely.
Yeah.
So for those that, there's a lot of research, and my partner works for a not-for-profit. And for those that volunteer for that not-for-profit, they're just so happy. And they're happy to be doing and giving something back to the community and not being financially rewarded to do so. It's just something about that pure selflessness that just creates your endorphins kind of run wild, right? Yep. You just feel so good. And, for those that are in a role that is just designed to kind of pay the bills, then they are supplementing that by giving back to the community in some way, shape or form. Even if it's just helping, that you're coaching the local kids soccer team, or whatever the case may be, that is where they get their purpose. That is where they get their joy. So yeah, definitely do say that.
And I think I'm in a privileged position that I do love what I do, but I haven't always. I remember being a recruitment consultant and thinking, this is an extrovert's job. I'm an introvert. And then even starting the business and being like, is this, or maybe not the business, because I've always I've known that that's what I want to do, but just having moments of doubt and imposter syndrome and worry and fear. And I think it's really been the pandemic for me where I've gone, do you know what? I really bloody love what I do. And also starting my master's, actually. I found in starting my master's of business and psychology last year that all of the time that I was supposed to be spending on academia, I since dropped out. Caveat that one. The time I was supposed to be spending on kind of researching these papers and doing assignments, I wanted to do Lotus things. Yeah. And I thought I needed the master's as like my next thing. Yeah. And it actually gave me such a shift in focus back to Lotus. And I realized that the time and the downtime where I was supposed to be doing assignments, I was coming up with creative ideas and coming up with sort of marketing ideas and coming up with strategies for the business. And I had this moment of going, oh my God, I really, really love what I do. Yeah. And again, like, of course I do. I've set up a business that's kind of based on passion and enthusiasm for my sector and everything. But I still had those kind of moments of going, like, is this the forever, etc. Yeah. But having these experiences, I'm like, yeah, no, actually, this has really landed me in knowing that this is kind of what I do. This is a really roundabout way of asking you a question. You're like probably looking at me going, yes, where do I come in? People listening, not everyone is in a position where they're like, I love it, love my job, get me up in the morning, bouncing out of bed. What would you give as advice to someone who was in a rut or felt like they weren't in the right career or they weren't playing to their strengths in their day-to-day? What would you suggest they do as a starting point?
Work out a game plan to pivot.
Yeah.
So I think about, first I kind of reflect on my career, and then I reflect on the conversations I have with our members from a financial perspective. Is, personally, I was really fortunate. I've always moved into roles where I had really strong leaders that I looked up to. And I was in one role for a period where management changed, and my manager was lovely, but I just didn't feel like I could learn anything from them, and that was quite challenging for me. In that I didn't, it's not that I didn't respect them. I just didn't. I didn't feel like they were helping with my kind of personal growth. So I took the opportunity to pivot, go and worked out again a strategy to determine, okay, well, what's next? This isn't working, because if you've mentally tapped out, you're not in a good place. Like if you're mentally like, I'm just doing the thing, then unless you proactively work out how to pivot around that, then you're going to remain in that position. So for me, it was about finding a role that I was passionate about at the same organization, just in a different space. But the conversations that I have with our members around their careers, often, the conversation comes up, oh, I want to retire early. Oh, I'd love to not have to work anymore. I want to generate investment income and passive income. And often that comes again back down to, well, they're not saying, I just don't want to do anything. They're saying, I want to do something that is purposeful or is more aligned to their creative side. And there's always this conversation is, I don't want to be beholden to the day job and the paycheck. And the conversation I would have about that is, again, working out, well, what financial position do you need to be in to create the ability for you to then pivot to a role or a career trajectory that you love and, fulfills you, knowing that, again, all of the financial stuff is going to be okay. Because the reality is most people will probably just stay in a role that they don't enjoy because of the financial obligations that they have.
Do you see people successfully pivot?
Yeah, definitely.
It's reassuring.
Yeah, definitely. But they've got a game plan.
Yes. Yep. And that's actually, it reminds me of a candidate who had a career who I met recently who was incredible. And she had a career in television and she was in production and in the background and had always been managing budgets and shows and doing a lot of the back end of TV. And she'd been there like 10 years and she just said, I just want to get into tech. There's something about the tech industry. There's something about that space that I really want to just kind of, I guess get a feel for. But she had such a good strategy in place. She had the businesses she could potentially work for. She'd researched the entry level roles. She was aware she was taking a pay cut, but everything about her search was so considered. And it took her a while. It was not easy. I tried to help her out and introduce her to a few people. I didn't place her in the end, but she's actually ended up at Canva. And she's a product assistant. So again, entry level after 10 years, amazing company, amazing opportunities. With that level of plan and strategy that she had, that she'll be working her way up and through and around that business in no time. But I think you're so right. It completely resonated as you said that and reminded me of this one candidate, because it is just about having a plan of action. Otherwise, we can just be in the hamster wheel and some people want that, right? Some people are happy and they're just, maybe they're not ambitious and maybe I don't know if they are happy, but they're just tracking along. Yeah. That's fine.
And that's okay because they may get fulfillment elsewhere.
Yes.
But, one of my favorite quotes is around, people with goals succeed because they know where they're going. Yeah. And your goals may change. That's okay. That's often why people don't set personal goals because I don't know where I'm going to be in 12 months. I don't know where I'm going to be in 3 years. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. Life changes, circumstances change, situations change. that's okay. But you've got to kind of take a step back and go, okay, well, where are you now? Where do you want to be?
Yeah.
And then work out, as you've kind of already alluded to, how are we going to get there?
Yeah. And I love one thing you said there about your managers and the leaders that you had. And I think that's such an important piece. I think really, if anyone is kind of at a place of and a point of wondering sort of what's next and what is the pivot, if there indeed is one, thinking about the people who you've either worked for or you do work with, or other people in your network, or asking for advice. Like, I don't think we lean on that enough. I think that people play such an important role in, naturally, it goes without saying, in all of our journeys, in all of our careers. And as you said, having those, and I'm the same, when I have people around me who inspire me and who I can look up to, I'm like a sponge. Like I just soak it all up. I'm like, give me all of the knowledge.
So much. Like just pick, listen to what everyone's saying, and just pick different pieces from everybody's journey to then create your own journey.
Yeah. Exactly. And that might be moving teams, as you've done, to work for a different manager, or it might just be kind of, as you said, taking different bits of influence that you then kind of package up as your own inspiration. But it is, people play such an important role within anyone's individual success, no matter what that looks like as well. Finally, it would definitely be remiss of me to not cover off financial advice. But if people are listening to this and going, money, yes, okay, I need to get sorted. Like, where, other than calling you guys, where would you recommend that they start?
Yeah. So the first thing would be to actually start.
Yeah.
Getting your financial well sorted is so easy to put on the back burner. And I see it time and time again. They're like, I'll deal with that later. I'll do this later. And that is, again, you may not be financially, motivated, but you're probably motivated by what it can afford you. That sense of freedom, that sense of flexibility. There's a lot of amazing podcasts out there. So She's on the Money with Victoria Devine, My Millennial Money with Glen James, great chap. Really, really good start. Barefoot Investor. So,
yes.
Everyone probably knows Barefoot Investor. He's sold millions of books.
I've read that book as well. It still didn't help me. I'm useless.
This is the thing. It's a great book, and a lot of the foundation, of setting up your kind of baseline financial world is in there. The challenge that a lot of our members have also read the book. The challenge is one, getting halfway through the book and then going, oh, this is really boring. Yeah. And then kind of just not getting through it. Or getting all the way to the end and going, oh, that was great. And then kind of not worrying about it and not doing anything about it. Or getting to the end of the book and then going, oh, there's so many options. I've listened to so many podcasts. I'm not sure what the right decision is. And then again, the default is no decision. So, in terms of when's the best time to get your financial well sorted, the sooner you get your shit sorted, the far better off you're going to be in the long run. And it's not all about planning for the future. I think that's where people sometimes get a little bit concerned. They're like, oh, I'll deal with that later. I'm still young, or whatever the case may be. But it's about just finding the right balance, making sure we're spending money on stuff that we love and enjoy today, but not wasting, not spending money on shit we just don't care about to the detriment of our, future longer term goals, whatever they may be. So.
Totally. I was speaking to one of my team the other day, and she's a newer consultant, and she said, I want to get it all sorted now. I want to reach out to the guys. I want to put a plan in place now in anticipation of future high earnings, because she's so new. She's like, that's the path I know I'm going to be on. And I love that. It's like, start early, get it in place, figure it out. Yeah. And it's so beneficial, right? Thank you so much.
No worries.
I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I feel like I could just keep going and going. I always have to pull myself away from the ends of these conversations, but that was amazing. It was so insightful. Again, I find you so inspiring. I absolutely love your business. I love what you guys are doing. It's so obvious that you're a purpose-led business and a purpose-led leader. And hopefully everyone has taken something away from today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.